We are families, we are caregivers, we are parents to children with disabilities and medical complexities. We are rarely familiar. We get together to learn, to relate, and to laugh a lot while we share each other's unique family experiences of raising the rarest of the rare. Our goal is to unite, inspire, educate, and empower people living a rarely familiar life. And we're so glad you're here.
Hi, and welcome to Rarely Familiar. This is Jen here with my co-host and friend Haley, where we dig into the realities of raising the rarest of the rare. Trum is not with us today, so we're going to power on without her. And we are going to dig into the very important topic of PCAs, which are personal care assistants. And you may hear other words used like support staff, personal assistants, respite caregivers. The list goes on, but we're going to use the title of PCA throughout the show. And we have a great guest, and I'm excited to talk about this. But first, Haley and I like to check in.
We were just talking about how rusty we are. We've been out for a couple months. Trum is out now, right? Everybody always has a crisis going on.
No,
and that's why we always specifically had 3 of us. Jen's been out for quite a while.
I have been. Yeah, just briefly, my son Julian in November had a seizure out of the blue at school, which resulted in full left side paralysis, continued seizures, loss of functioning, and swelling of the brain, which led to an emergency craniectomy. I have been out of commission in the hospital with him for 2.5 months, and it has been quite a winter, very stressful. So we're going to dig into that in a future show, but I just wanted to say I'm so excited to be back.
And there are so many cans of worms that can open, right? That like FMLA and having to use that. And there's just an endless amount of content there. So yeah, we'll dedicate a specific show just to that. So that'll come soon.
Yes. I had to literally dust off my mic and boom stand today. How do I set this all up again? I feel very rusty, so please bear with me today. This topic is really dear to me because I am currently looking for a PCA, and so I'm very curious to hear thoughts around this with you, Haley, with your experience and also our guest. So, Haley, we've had a busy couple weeks getting back into the world of our kids and the resources out there.
You've been with me at the last 2 kind of big events. There's always an event it's either right around February or March here in Minneapolis, sponsored by the Chad Greenway Foundation. And they host mostly moms, right? The event is called Tend Her Heart, and it's moms of kids with special health care needs. And Jen, you attended for the first time this year. Several people to share a little bit about their experience. I got up and I told a story of how Trum and I met, actually. Jen, I'm curious your perspective on that event, being a first-timer there.
Well, first of all, let me just say you were awesome. And it was a big deal to be up there standing in front of 500 people. So you were amazing and one of the best speakers. It was exciting to be there.
I'd great ones this year.
There were really good speakers.
Yeah, sometimes
really
it can be
quality.
Like a little tear-jerky and heavy. And I think there was a lot of people who really had some great things to say and were a little bit more uplifting. But being down in the depths of it all is part of this journey too.
Yeah, I think being in a group of women who are mostly caregivers and have had similar stories as us and experiences. And, people kept talking about, I was in the hospital and I was here and there. Like you could just relate constantly over and over. And so just to be around people like that is like a really nice feeling because in the real world, we are not, we feel like we're kind of like, where are our people? So that was nice. And to get dressed up and they had mimosas and they had gifts for us. And it was a special event. So
you can go deep fast because you don't have to explain your kid's situation, or you see these people that you've had relationships with online or in Facebook groups. And all of a sudden it's like, gosh, you're here in the flesh.
I know. We saw 2 of our former guests.
Right?
That was great. Yeah.
So that was neat. Really fun. But then there was another event, Rare Disease Day. And all of our kids fall under that rare disease umbrella. I don't like the term disease. I much prefer condition or disorder. versus disease, but certainly Felix falls under that. Julian falls under that. Sadie falls under that. And so Rare Disease Day was a big event that happens nationally. And they do an event at the U of M sponsored by the Center for Orphan Drug Research, about 300 people. They invite researchers, they invite clinicians, they invite people with lived experience. This year's event was all focused on people with lived experience. So I was one of the keynote speakers, along with another parent of a child with rare disease, and then someone living with rare disease herself, who's also a researcher in that space. So it was a great day. And then a panel of experts. Dr. Tori Barr was there, as well as several other amazing people. I think it was a really good conversation and bringing a lot of diverse perspectives together.
I was very impressed and fascinated. I took tons of notes, and my car didn't start when I was getting ready to come, and I just said, I have to be there. So I jumped in an Uber. So it was one of those days.
I didn't see you until I was up on the podium, and I was like,
and then Haley, of course, spoke again, and you were so well prepared, and I was very impressed again. So you're on a roll now. We got to find another speaking engagement for you.
There is one. There's the APP conference, which is coming up on April 28th. I have to talk for an hour on that one.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Yeah. Well, let's move into the show because our guest is here and we don't want to keep her waiting.
I know, she's waiting. She's lingering, right?
So our guest is Nikki Hayes. Nikki is a mother of 4 young adults. She was a home health aide for people experiencing memory loss for a year and a half when she discovered the perfect outlet for her gift of intuition through volunteering with kids at Crescent Cove, our local children's respite and hospice home. Through Crescent Cove and a mutual friend, she found the Brunels, who were looking for a new PCA for Felix, who was about 4 at the time. The connection was instant, and they lived happily ever after. The end.
Can't believe she was 4 when we met you. Cannot believe
that. She was so little.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I've seen your photos all over the place on Haley's social media. It's fun to finally meet you in person. So welcome to the show. And I think the first question that we always ask is, what is your tie into the disability? So if you want to speak more about that, and then I'm very curious about your intuition statement.
So I started my journey with the elderly memory care community, which I do love them and I fit in very well there. I really enjoyed that. And then I was led to Crescent Cove, which, that organization is just incredible. The respite that they provide for families of children with complex medical stuff is priceless. And it was just such a perfect fit. I think I was there like 3 days a week volunteering. I just loved it so much. I fit perfectly, which is where the intuition piece came in. COVID happened and they shut down for a long time. They couldn't have volunteers. And the timing of finding Haley and Felix was seamless transition. You asked about my intuition part, and with a lot of these kids at Crescent Cove, there's a lot of nonverbal children. And with nonverbal children, you just have to go a little bit higher to connect. Mm-hmm. You have to kind of tune into their energy in a particular way so that you can kind of get who they are, things they like, what they might need. You have to pay attention differently to their cues. There's so much that is communicated nonverbally, and it came in really handy.
It's such a learned skill too. I think you have an innate probably ability to do this, but as a parent of a nonverbal child, there is a sense of you have to slow down and just really hone in on that person.
Yes.
And not frame it the way that we do in verbal communication worlds, and people. So, okay. So did you meet Felix and Haley at Crescent Cove? Was Felix at
Felix first, didn't you?
I met Felix first. Yep. I had met him at Crescent Cove once. And then we have a mutual friend who I was seeing on a regular basis. So she kept telling me they're looking for a PCA. They need a PCA. And I was like, okay. And that first day when I came in, it was just perfect.
I think it was during COVID too, because when we talked, I remember I was like, I need somebody who can adhere to our rules. And we had strict rules about masking and about all these things because I needed to protect my kid. And I think at first you were like, I don't know if I can do that. I've got these 4 other kids and we have teenagers too. So we get it, right? You can't control what they do. And I think initially you're like, I don't know if we can do it. And I was like, don't let that stop you, please. I get it. And I loved the fact that you cared enough to almost walk away because you felt like you couldn't protect our family. And that more to me than anything.
I don't want to ever be a liability. I mean, and now we're all together so much that if you get sick, I get sick. We share.
Just germ sharing. Yeah.
Well, that was 4 years ago, was right in the pandemic. I mean, we were full on.
That was a hard time to try and find somebody you trust. I was on the phone with people, interviewing people, and they're like, oh, well, I travel all the time. I'm like, well, sorry. I don't trust people that are going to be traveling all over. And we all know that spreads things so fast. It's hard. There was just so much we didn't know at that point. Man, am I glad that you didn't walk away and we made it work. We're all figuring this out together. And I think just having Felix's best interests at mind, that's all we try and do.
So, Nikki, what are some of the things that the PCA does? So what are some of the duties that you partake in with Felix on a daily basis?
I'm in charge of playing really hard. For Felix, he needs to be transferred to the potty after the potty, full mobility assistance. Yeah. So, and it's communicating with him, finding out how he's doing, what his needs are, what he wants to be doing, making sure that we stay on a schedule for potty, for food, making sure that I notice any new sores on his body, any like how his stoma's looking, paying attention to all these things. Felix in particular has an extremely high level of pain. So he isn't as likely to mention something that hurts. And so just looking out for all these things, just grooming things, his nails. We have spa day.
Why? And do you take him places like on outings? Okay.
We go to therapy every week. Sometimes we just have to go to Target. Circle that is what he calls it.
Okay.
Circle that. Go to Target. Check out what toys and books there. It's fun to get out, especially in the summer when it's nice. And now that he has a power wheelchair and he has so much more control over where he goes and how fast he goes, it's more fun for him to go exploring in the world. He sometimes needs a little encouraging. He would sit and play Magna-Tiles every day for the rest of his life. So we make up games to play outside.
They're making bouncing balls and balloons.
Yeah.
So kind of like, the traditional babysitting kind of, but with the medical complexity, in there, because I'm sure you're CPR trained and all of that.
Yep.
Okay.
And I oh my gosh, he loves these bouncy balls. I know I'm going to be throwing balls for myself and then chasing them, and he is going to laugh about it. Just things like
awesome. Right.
There's a couple of things I want to mention here. One, that Nikki has been so good at learning to speak Felix. We were just talking the other day about how he started out air spelling letters, and that's how he was communicating with it. He had his AAC, his iPad to communicate, but you don't always have it right near you. So he would try and spell things out, and now he's got some more verbal communication, but it's really hard to understand. But throughout all of this, and this is where her intuitive nature comes in, and being able to speak Felix, how do you interview for that? I don't know. We just kind of lucked out on that in that way, and I'm super grateful. And then the other thing was that PCAs are so important to him. They're really his friends.
Yeah.
All he wanted for his birthday when he turned 8 was to have all his past PCAs in one room together playing with him. And it was the most beautiful, unconventional birthday party you've ever seen. But these are really his people in ways I can't explain.
Yep.
Oh, I get it. Julian, it has about 10 words. One of his words is star. And star was his first PCA.
Oh.
And he was 2. And he just now equates anyone who is a caregiver by the name of Star, which is fascinating to me, which again shows that the relationship is so strong. Okay, so in the work that you're doing, which is not easy, I know, what do you think keeps you we want to talk about retention, keeping good people in these positions. And so if you've been at the Brunels for 4 years, you've been at them for 4 years, clearly Haley and Tim are doing something right. And Felix, we know, is, of course. But what would you say, us families, who are looking for people to help our kids, what do we need to have in place for you? What do you need in place to stay happy and satisfied in the work?
I think one thing that Haley and I mean, we've talked about this so many times, is the flexibility aspect, because if Felix gets sick or he's in the hospital, I can't work. Figuring out how to make up time, how to take time off, just being open, because I do have a family also. I mean, they're older now. I've only got one left at home, but stuff goes on, like I have a life that happens also. And most of the time my life is stable enough, but the flexibility has just been huge. Working around schedules, summer schedules, things change all the time, days off of school. That's probably been the biggest part that helps me in communication, just having open communication. Like, I need to know things. I need to know when something changes for Felix. Things change for the kids all the time. It is very fluid. Maybe the feeding schedule's off. Like, take your pick. There's one thing changes everything else. And it takes a very long time to get back on track after there's been an illness, or there's a very slow process of getting to normal again.
I think communication is so critical. Our family affects her family. It all becomes so gelled together. I know that's not the case for everyone, and it all depends on how many hours you have. And it works for us to be a little bit more flexible because she works full time for us. So if there's a sickness, then it's like, okay, can you pick up a weekend instead? We have pretty much set hours, but we make up the time. Just keeping that fluid communication going, because it's not just our family. Anything that happens in our family then affects Nikki and her other jobs, right?
The merging of communication and flexibility, I would think. Do you feel, Nikki, that you can say to Haley, this schedule doesn't work because of X, Y, and Z. And I think we need to shift things around or do things differently. Do you feel like you have that flexibility of schedule and voicing your thoughts around a situation? Because I think that would be very important to be heard, because you are getting such a sense of what his needs are on a different level. I think as moms, we're like, we see things a certain way, and then somebody else is like, oh, okay, coming from the side.
I would say we do a lot of problem solving together. If there's an issue anywhere, that like we put our brains together and what do you see? And here's what I see. And what do we think will work? And yeah, it's a big deal. Communication is everything.
And especially when it comes to the school, because she gets them off the bus, so she knows what went on at school and knows where to pick up things. The support, I think, is just so helpful. It allows me to be able to work. There are other options. Like, you can do paid parent, but for me, it allows me to have a little bit of life outside of the home, which I feel like I need to be a better mother. It's just who I am. What do you always say, Nikki?
Every wife needs another wife.
Every wife needs a wife.
Well, I
love my husband, but it's so true.
I love it.
It's nice to have that. It's like it's like having your sister there, or what, like somebody will be like, oh, what do you think about this? And what do you think? That's just there.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing. I'm so happy for you guys. It's just great. It's such a important, invaluable extra support for Felix and for you all. Okay, so let's get honest. I want to know the highs and the lows of this job, because this is not an easy job. I mean, you're getting into the trenches here at times.
And he's getting heavy.
And he's getting bigger. And, I have a 14-year-old who is going through puberty. I mean, there's some real things happening. And so what could you tell the listeners about kind of the real highs and lows of this kind of job?
Well, here's the thing, and I'm not just saying this because Haley's sitting here, but I have a decent level of guilt over how much I love my job. So many people are like, oh, work. And I'm like, it doesn't feel like work to me. I adore hanging out with Felix. We have so much fun.
Let's be real. He's kind of your fifth child.
He is. Absolutely. For sure.
No.
For sure he is. Oh, he is getting heavier, but
Yeah.
this is good for me also because I'm getting stronger. With the elevator now, it was tough before the elevator, like
Oh my
all the
gosh.
stairs, carrying
Oh,
him up all the
goodness.
stairs.
Okay.
It
But-
was starting to really feel unsafe. Like the heavier he
Yes.
got.
Oh, and just when he would like completely give up on holding on at all, like just,
Wet noodle. Like
yeah.
I would imagine too, the toileting is not the most fun aspect of it, although you get used to it, I'm
she's
sure.
also wiped 4 butts prior.
That's true.
His butt's clean. Like,
No.
Well, that is
what I've ever
true.
seen.
He's on a perfect diet.
He's on a perfect diet. Yeah, he's very reliable. So again, with that, it's more just the lifting, and the transfers than anything. But I mean, some of our most inventive games have come while we're sitting on the toilet for 25 minutes. He comes up with stuff all the time to do. Sometimes I have to sit next to him and we pretend we're driving and looking at cell phone tower. He's just one big ball of imagination.
And so is Nikki. She doesn't give herself enough credit. I'm sitting down here working and I'll come up and she's created some big award that she's given him
Yeah, it sounds like you're very creative. And that is a good asset to have in this job.
We are.
I know, speaking on like the relationship, when Julian was in the hospital, his former PCA, her name is Sydney, but Julian calls her Dee Dee. That's another one of his words, Dee Dee. So she came to the hospital probably 4 times. And it just was, even when Julian was pretty much like in and out of consciousness, he could still feel her presence. And that connection continues to be so strong, even though she's not formally his PCA anymore. But the bond that develops is just really beautiful if you can find it. But it's not easy. I am looking and it is not easy.
It's not. My heart goes out to parents. I feel very, once you have a child, all children kind of feel like your children. And I feel so protective of you guys. Like, I wish I could be there to interview people because I feel like, it just means so much to me that people can find the right person. It matters so much.
And I have to say, we've just been so lucky. Every one of our PCAs has said that same thing. They're hesitant to like give up. I don't trust this next new person coming in. Are they going to take as good care of him as I did?
Yeah.
And every single one has felt that way. And that's huge because it just speaks to how much of a vested interest they have in him. And nobody has to. That's not part of the job.
That's the other part I really like is during PCA training that we have to do all the time. There's a lot of talk about boundaries. And when it comes to kids, it's different. Of course, boundaries are always safe. We all have boundaries. It is important. But when it comes to children, allowing that attachment to happen on both sides can only be helpful. And it's got to be hard because I feel like PCAs tend to not last or stay around very long. And so that is, I mean, like you were talking about with Julian, he's had a couple
it's
that
the
he's
pay.
played
I mean, the pay is just,
It is, yeah. It's ridiculous.
It's hard to find them. We've had probably 10, and some of them were just, I had a PCA whose boyfriend would sit out in his car in front of my house, idling the car.
Nope.
And she would do drop-ins on Saturdays with Burger King bags of food. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? And she would take photos of him and post on her Facebook page. I mean, it was so inappropriate. I've had a few kind of horror stories. And so I think you two have a really exceptionally wonderful story here, but I don't think it's so easy for everyone. Oh, I just wonder if we could dig into kind of like, how do we find a PCA? What are some of the search strategies that you have found successful, Haley? Because you are an expert at this.
Felix has had PCA since he was a year and a half. And I didn't know at first. We went through a couple of little more rocky situations. But I learned that even though you have an agency, you're in a system that manages the payment and the support is there on that side of it. I like to be in control of the hiring because I like to be in control. Let's face it. That is a critical part of why we've gotten the people that we have, because I was willing to talk to 60 people on the phone to find the top 5. Here's my strategy, right? to really find the right people. I would post on care.com, and I wouldn't say that it was for PCA specifically, right? But I would say really good fits for this type of work is someone who might be in school to be a special ed teacher or a retired special ed teacher, as long as you're strong, or somebody studying to do any of the therapies, OT, PT, speech, somebody studying to be a nurse or a doctor. This is great experience for you. And I have had a few of those PCAs. Those have been very successful PCA relationships. But I didn't tell them it was PCA work. After I had interviewed them, and I had like top 5 questions to ask them. We have a dog. We expect you to mask if you are sick. We expect this, this, and this. And it was just deal breakers right away. It was like, we live here. If you are traveling 40 miles away, that's probably not going to work.
So some just basic screening criteria
that I can ask right away.
Right.
And if they don't pass that, thank you for your time. I don't think this is going to be a good fit.
Sure. Okay.
And so I would take 60 of those phone calls and hone it down to the top few. And then I would say, okay, so here's the real deal. This is actually PCA work. And we have to have you fill out timesheets. You have to go through a certification process and an application process. I can help you through all of that. And they'll do a background check and all of that. So that kind of came later. And I think that was really helpful because I could cast the net a lot wider. So that's one strategy I've used, and that's worked really well for me. I've gotten a lot of students that didn't know PCA was a thing, which leads me to another point. And I feel like this is work that I need to do more of. At the university level, they need to be the connectors to say, hey, this is going to help you. This is a resume builder for you. You're getting experience. It's such a perfect marriage. We have so many people out there that are struggling to find PCAs. And then we've got this wealth of potential PCAs, especially in the summertime, that could be doing it on the weekends or whatever, of students that are out there. We just need to make that connection. And I don't think that's happening. And that's something on my list to start doing more of, because I think that's another great way to find PCA help. We found one of our summer PCAs through St. Ben's and their nursing program. It came through a personal network. I think once you kind of start having a few people talk, and I know somebody and I know somebody, it helps to know a lot of people.
Yeah, word of mouth for sure. I'm using care.com, and we have an interview tomorrow night, and my former mother-in-law is helping me with this because I'm so busy. I'm overwhelmed, and she's jumping in, which is amazing.
Screening first, phone screening first.
She's doing the screenings, and she's doing the initial interview, and then I'm doing the second interview. And so she found somebody, and I'm interviewing them tomorrow night. But this is very helpful because I didn't think about like the basic screening criteria. Will you wear a mask? Can you drive? Where do you live? You know, I have a dog too. There are, county programs where PCAs are assigned to you. So we don't always have the option, depending on what kind of funding that you receive for your child and what kind of waiver program.
There are different programs you can choose. So when you
so you can still eliminate ones that don't work for you.
If someone is not working out, there's paperwork you can fill out.
Correct, right. But I'm thinking of like when Julian was on the DD waiver, now he's on CDCS. It was different how it was like assigned, where they would assign PCAs that would come, and then if it didn't work, I could get a new one. But now with the CDCS waiver, I can actually go out and find my people.
I think there's always a way for you to have more control. And you have to ask to be on the PCA choice program, but that also means that you are the responsible party. You need to sign all the timesheets. You need to make sure you're submitting everything on time. You need to do all the hiring. It's more effort, but I think it's worth it in the end.
Okay. Well, speaking of time, I know we're running out and you have to get to Felix soon, but is there any last closing thoughts you have? Any funny story that you like to share, or dramatic happening, or advice?
I'll just mention one thing and then I have a fun story about Felix. But the first thing that I wanted to share was when you're doing all the screenings, and all of that matters, but I think one of the things, kind of the intuition and energy piece, is just, when somebody fits. It just feels like you found another piece of your puzzle and that they belong. And this might be a part we don't talk about as much, just because all the other things really matter. It's really important.
That's very good to remind us.
Yeah, you could have somebody who has dealt with children in their life, but their philosophy might be, you do what I say, or, they're just not connecting with the child to get in there the right way. So I think the energy component is important also.
It's like house hunting. When you walk into a house, you instantly feel it or you don't feel it. It's the same with.
It's a yes
that's
or
a
no.
great reminder. Yeah, good reminder to pay attention to the energy.
In the same way we can communicate with our kids, like tap into that. What is that feeling you're getting about that person? Does it feel right or does it feel a little off? Trust your gut if it feels a little off.
And, the family is important in that aspect too, because you and Tim are definitely, I feel like we're just one big unit. Yes, you are. It's easy for me being the third wheel. But can you imagine households that are completely unhealthy where you might get along great with the child, but the rest of the dynamics doesn't feel good at all? Yeah, it's an energy fit kind of.
Yeah, and in the same way, a nurse is not at the peds level is not just a nurse for that patient. And I think a lot about our NICU stay, right? It was so much. Yes, that nurse was there for the patient, but so much of that was parent interaction. So it's got to be a fit this way as much as with the kids.
Yeah. So there was one day, probably a year ago, maybe more than that now, that Felix and I were sitting downstairs and I was coming up with a game just to pass some time. He loves bells, so he has a whole set of bells that are to scale. They have their notes and they're all different colors. So that was really going to be the game. I was going to ring a bell behind my back and see if he could guess the color. I thought this game was going to take us a long time, but it didn't. I rang one of the bells behind my back and I said, "What color was that?" And he said yellow. And I was like, "Oh, wow, nice shot. Okay, that was yellow." Wow. So I did it a few more times, and it turns out that he has perfect pitch. Like, he wasn't guessing. He actually knew from
the signs of it.
Synesthesia. So Nikki discovered that Felix has synesthesia. So either he can see notes as colors, or we're still trying to figure this out. The MIDI stuff that he's into lately.
Yes. I just remember sitting there like, and there's so many things like this that you just discover on accident because, first of all, he probably doesn't realize that it's something that not everybody has. But if you don't ask him the right question, he isn't that likely to share certain things with you. So we keep making these fun discoveries.
Thank you so much for being so honest with us and for being such a great caregiver.
Yeah, thank you for having me and good luck, Jen. I'll send all good energy for you that you find a really good fit.
Thank you so much. Me too.
Really? I'll see you in a little bit. Bye.
Bye, you guys. If you liked today's topic or have comments, questions, or thoughts on what else you would like us to cover, please visit rarelyfamiliar.com or connect with us on all the social channels. Resources will be listed in our show notes, and we'll be back next time with another discussion around living life successfully with rare medical complexities. Thanks for joining us on the journey.